Welcome back to AAA Academy. My name is Delia. I'm co-founder of AAA, an over-collateralized decentralized lending protocol. This lesson will discuss the automated market maker, or AMMs. Those are the most popular form of decentralized exchanges on DeFi, and they really help the DeFi to grow significantly in size due to their ideal design. In order to understand what an AMM is and what it does, we should talk first about the concept of a liquidity pool. So the idea here is to let a smart contract do the so-called market making, which is the process of serving the markets. Maybe you remember from the prior lecture, in the order book model, you have those different orders on the bid and ask side, and they have to somehow match right in the middle. So the more orders there are in the market, the bigger or the deeper the liquidity is in this market, and the better the overall financial efficiency of this market. Instead of having external actors putting in orders manually, why don't we have a smart contract that does everything? And this is basically what an AMM is. So you have here the rich and wealthy actor Alice. She's adding liquidity X and Y into the smart contract pool. And then you have Bob, the trader who wants to exchange X for Y. And because he trusts the service, he's also paying a fee to Alice, who earns an interest on her assets. Now, how can we perform such a market making or such a liquidity provision through a mathematical formula that we can program into a smart contract? So the most common way of doing this is the so-called constant product formula. So we have a token X with a certain quantity, and we have a token Y with a certain quantity. So the product of those two quantities must remain constant as long as there is no additional quantity of X or Y that's getting added. So if we do add either X or Y to this liquidity pool, then obviously the constant will change. The property of an AMM is that we have instant liquidity, meaning that we can exchange at any point in time, so we don't have to wait until there is another order coming in. As you remember from the limit order book, where you need another order from another entity to come in order to fulfill our request of an exchange. So we have instant liquidity regardless of the trade size. However, with a disadvantage that there is a certain slippage, meaning that there is a price change while we are executing the trade. And we'll be looking at the bonding curve in the next slide. So if you purchase a token X, this will increase the price of X as well. And because there are only two assets in this particular market and K is constant, the price of the token Y has to decrease. And this is very intuitive and simple. So the ratio of the quantity of token X and Y define the price in this particular market. Using the architecture of an exchange, something that we talked in the prior lesson, we have a price finding mechanism while we are also doing the market making and the trade matching. So everything is really condensed in this very simple formula. Some people refer to this as a constant product AMM. And there are also more sophisticated formulas out there where you can actually have multiple assets, more than two assets in a market. And you can also have different values that configure this AMM curve. So I've been speaking about the bonding curve. Now let's look into how this actually works. Here at this current state, on the x-axis, we have an amount of X tokens in the pool, and on the y-axis, we have an amount of Y tokens in the pool. So this is the AMM state we are having before a trade execution. So we have a quantity of 10 of the token X and a quantity of 30 of the token Y. So 10 times 30 is 300. So the constant in this very state is 300. Now, what do you think it will happen if the trader wants to remove 10 Y tokens from the market? So the Y quantity, of course, will decrease by 10, ending up to 20. Now, how many X tokens you need to purchase in the pool in order to get in return 10 Y tokens? So the answer here is 5. So if you want to get 10 out of the pool, you'll have to add 5 token X here to maintain the same constant. So in this state of the trade, we have 15 and 20. Those are the two quantities. And you multiply them and you get the same constant, which is 300. So this is how a bonding curve functions. And this is how you can basically specify how many funds you would like to purchase or sell given a certain state of the market. What happens to the price? The price is actually changing while you move on this bonding curve. So the initial price at the very top is very different from the one in the middle and basically gets worse the bigger your trade is. So every token of Y you get has a slightly different price of a token X as long as you move along this curve. And the expected slippage is basically defined as the increase or decrease in price based on trading volume and available liquidity. So the more liquidity this pool has, the more money is in this pool, the smaller the expected slippage becomes. This is called expected slippage because that's something that you can calculate based on the pool state, as we just did in the prior slide. You can also estimate how much slippage you will get. You can estimate also the decrease in price or the increase in price. So contrary to the expected slippage, we also have an unexpected slippage. If we look at the chart on the left side, where I have my mouse, if your trade it's the TC, but in addition to this, there is another trade TD that executes before your trade, then you might think that you will execute at this point here at the top. But in reality, you will end up executing at the lower point because there is another transaction TD that gets executed before yours, which means that you will receive a much worse price than you anticipated. So in this particular example, you will get a worse execution price. On the other hand, based on the chart on the right side, you may get lucky, so you can have an unexpected slippage that will provide you a better execution price. So for example, you are thinking that you will get executed at this point here where my mouse is, but because the TD gets executed ahead of you, you'll end up executing at a higher point, which means that it's a better price, it's a better execution price. So certainly this results in quite some interesting attack vectors that we'll be speaking in a further lesson. So what about slippage protections? How can we protect ourselves so we don't get pushed along this curve by different trades? So we want to protect ourselves to some degree, and that's where the slippage protection comes into place. So basically, the slippage protection is a threshold that you can specify. So for example, on Uniswap UI, you can specify to pay at most 1% slippage. And then you know that in the worst case, the price that you will get is 1% worse than what you thought you will get. This is certainly very helpful to set slippage rate. And if somebody will execute in front of you, which might happen, then your transactions will hit the slippage limit, and then it will basically not execute if the price is worse than you are willing to pay. So in this case, in the first case, on the left-hand side, the trade will fail. You will still be liable to pay transactions fees to the miners. However, you will not lose any additional funds due to an excessive slippage. Let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of AMMs. So what are the pros and cons of an AMM? Look at the list. So the great thing is that there is no order book maintenance. Don't have to add new orders, cancel orders, etc. Another advantage is that it's relatively simple to implement a constant product AMM. The execution of a simple trade is relatively low, so the gas costs are rather small too. The main disadvantage of an AMM is the danger of an impermanent loss that we'll be discussing later. So there might be actually the possibility of a total loss of funds, which is possible if, for example, one of the two coins which are part of the liquidity pool grows significantly in value in relationships to the other, or the stable coin depegs. This only affects liquidity providers. Alice, in our example, who is actually providing liquidity. This does not affect the liquidity takers, such as Bob, who is just a trader in an AMM. So this is not something that you need to worry as long as you're not providing liquidity to an AMM. Another disadvantage of AMMs is the high slippage for low liquidity markets. So if you trade on those exchanges, please do observe your slippage tolerance. Set yours at 1% or whatever you're comfortable with and calculate your expected loss. Users are also vulnerable to sandwich attacks. So we'll discuss this more in a different lecture, but the underlying idea is that if you do have a trade that goes along the bonding curve, and there are two other trades that might squeeze you to extract that whole slippage. So I'm going to leave you with some reference to AMM white papers worth reading. So please, if you have time, please just try to read, especially the last one, the white paper version 3 of the Uniswap. So I hope you like these lectures on AMMs. There are certainly very exciting products on DeFi. Go ahead, try them yourself on chain with small amounts first. Try to play with the slippage and see what it means. See what you get out of it, and please ask questions. Thank you very much for listening to this lesson. I hope you liked it and looking forward to see you in the next part.